Okay, welcome to the second half of the box and whisker plot lessons. Last lesson, we learned how to make a box and whisker plot using the 5-number summary. And we made our box and whisker plot down here. We talked about how there is 25% of the data in each one of these 4 little sections. And so by looking at the sections, we could figure out kind of the shape of the data, where the data is clumped, and so forth. But where I left off was I did not tell you how to calculate the IQR and the outliers. So first of all, let's talk about the IQR. This is an acronym for, or is it an acronym? Maybe it's just a little, I don't know. Anyway, it stands for inter-quartile range. Very complicated way of saying you're just going to take Q3 and go minus Q1. So, for example, if we're looking at the Shiremanstown, the IQR, I'm going to take Q3 minus Q1. That's 260K minus 170K. That is 90K. And for Mechanicsburg, it's 550K minus 180K. That is 370? I think it's 370. So 370,000 is the interquartile range. So that's easy. Now, why do we need to know the interquartile range? The reason is because we're going to get a little mathematical interpretation of how to find outliers. Up until now, when we've been looking at data, so for example, the Shiremanstown data, we've looked at the data and we've said to ourselves, this guy and this guy look really far outside. They're probably outliers. But we didn't really have a good mathematical way of approaching that. We just kind of decided it. Does 900,000 constitute an outlier here? I mean, I have a bunch of other pretty expensive houses. So how do I actually figure out what is an outlier and what is not? So here's what you're going to do. You're going to take the IQR and you're going to multiply it by 1.5. This is just kind of arbitrary. A statistician came up with it somewhere, just decided, hey, we'll call an outlier this. You could interpret it different ways, to be honest. It's kind of arbitrary. It's not a hard and fast rule. You're going to take 1.5 times the IQR, and you're going to look that much above Q3, and you're going to look that much below Q1. And you're going to see if there are things outside. If there are values outside of that range, they are outliers. So let's take a look at the Shiremanstown data. First of all, I know that the IQR is 90K. 1.5 times the IQR is going to be 135K. I can do that in my head. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the Q1 and Q3. If I go 1.5 times the IQR less than Q1, okay, so Q1 is 170, and I'm going to go 135,000. I can't write right now. 135,000 less than that. That's 35,000. So if there are any numbers that are lower than 35,000, they are an outlier. So let's look. Oh, well, the lowest house is 125,000. So apparently there are no low outliers. Also, I'm going to go Q3 plus 1.5 times the IQR. So that's going to be, let's see, my Q3 is 260,000. And to that, I'm going to add 135,000. To find 395,000. If there are any houses above that, they are outliers. And if I look at my data, I actually do have 2 houses above this 395,000 mark. So these 2 are outliers. Now here's what's really cool. We can actually change our graph to make it include the outliers. Here's how we're going to do that. I'm going to mark each of the outliers. Let me switch to blue. I'm going to mark each of our outliers with an asterisk. So here's the 800,000 outlier. Here's the 600,000 outlier. And my new maximum is going to be the next lowest value, so 260,000. That is actually the value of Q3. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put my maximum right there. In other words, there is no upper whisker because the new maximum happens to be exactly the same as Q3. Now, this new stem or box and whisker plot is extremely useful for us because what does it show us? It shows us that most of the data is clumped right here, but then there are just these two crazy rich people up here. So it shows us, it gives us an even better kind of idea of what the shape is and shows us directly what the outliers are. Now let's do the exact same thing for the Mechanicsburg data and then we'll be done. For the Mechanicsburg data, 1.5 times the IQR is, I don't feel like doing this one in my head, is 555,000. Now, let's think about this real quick. My Q3 is 550,000. If I add 555,000 to this, I'm over $1 million, right? But look, this house is 900,000. In other words, even though this house seems really high, since when I go Q3 plus the IQR, so 550,000 plus 555,000, since that's 1,105,000. Since this last house is lower than that upper bound, it is not an outlier, which means that I'm going to keep this graph the same. I actually don't have any outliers. Okay, so that's how you calculate outliers. Take the IQR, multiply by 1.5, add it to Q3, see if there's anything outside. Subtract it from Q1, see if there's anything outside. In this case, we found that Shiremanstown does have 2 outliers. We found that Mechanicsburg does not have any, so its graph stays normal. Thanks for watching.